Okay, guys, and joining us right now from his home, it's part of the Texas Rangers radio broadcast, and our buddy Matt Hicks. Matt, what's going on, man?
Man, I tell you what, we're powering our way to the end, right? We're grinding and ready to go.
Yeah, it's taking an extra energy drink or cup of coffee at this point, but we're gonna get there. You know, I was thinking back, Matt, and I don't know where the club was, but it was the 1/3 mark of the season, and you were on the broadcast talking, and you said, you know, at this point in the season, oftentimes you are what you are. You are what your record says you are, and you were 100% right. I mean, it's just been a stagnant, really, the whole season. What have you seen from high above?
Yeah, what's your analysis? What went wrong?
Well, I don't know if you can pinpoint exactly one thing that went wrong, but you know, to what you stated there, Jeff, you get about 50 or 60 games into the season, and I think you probably do have a pretty good idea of what your team's like. What the Detroit Tigers are doing this year is different, right? That's the aberration, and definitely not the norm. Teams can go on extended runs at some point in the season, but it just doesn't happen very often. And so, I think that last year, when we take a look at what the Rangers accomplished, you had everybody having really good seasons for the most part. And this year, the club, everybody deals with injuries, but I think the Rangers probably had more than their fair share that they had to deal with. And from a position player standpoint, when at the beginning of the season, if you were told, well, you're not going to have Josh Young for 4 months, and you're essentially not going to have Evan Carter for the entire season. Well, that's 2/9 of your lineup right there that, contributed heavily to what was a successful 2023, and especially what, Evan Carter was able to do at the end of the season when he joined the club and in the postseason. So you don't have those guys, and then you have a pretty decent chunk of your starting rotation that's not available for most of the year. So you're behind the 8 ball right there when it comes to all of that. And some guys have had good seasons, but collectively, as a whole, the entire team was not able to cobble together what they were able to do in 2023. And so, I don't think that there's any finger pointing probably that's necessary, but it's just one of those deals that these years are going to happen. And I realize fans are wondering, hey, it's essentially the same group of guys that won the World Series. But when you have a lot of those guys that are out for extended periods of time, that makes it really challenging.
Yeah, and when a team wins a World Series, they have guys who have career years. I mean, that's just the nature of it. You have guys that overachieve. Yep. And you can look back now and in hindsight and go back and look at their numbers at the beginning of the season. Adolis Garcia is not as good as he was last year, historically. Same thing with Jonah Heim. So, did they regress from what they are normally? Yes, they did, but still, you just didn't have the guys who broke out. So, Chris Young said this, you can have injuries or underperformance, but you can't have them both.
Right.
And the Rangers definitely had that offensively.
Yeah, scoring runs was it. The pitching staff, for the most part, even with the injuries they dealt with, was not bad. That was a team that was a pitching staff, even at the back end, which they didn't have all last year. They really struggled at the back end of the bullpen. This year, they really had a pretty decent bullpen, a decent starting rotation. They kept them in games.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you take a look at what we had, like, people didn't know what we were going to have with Michael Lorenzen at the beginning of the season. And Michael Lorenzen ended up being a guy, who kept you in the ball game and gave you a chance to win every time that he stepped out on the mound. Or a guy like Jose Urena, who, really stepped forward during spring training and, took to heart whatever it was that he learned at the end of last year in the Chicago organization, in the White Sox system, and then was able to put it to use here this year. And then, he filled a number of voids, that early in the season, stepping in when needed and then getting moved to the rotation and being good there for 8 or 9 starts, then going back to the bullpen in a long relief role where he essentially not only pitched well in that role, but pitched well enough that it was of enough value to the team that it extended beyond his actual performance. And so, there were enough, and then, Cody Bradford, started off the season so well, got hurt, and you see what he's done, since he's come back. There have been a number of guys who have stepped up and done really, really well from a pitching standpoint. And that did help, keep the team, at least in the discussion for a pretty good chunk of the season. And, John, you talk about the back end of the bullpen, the signings of David Robertson and Kirby Yates in the offseason. When those guys got signed, there wasn't really a whole lot of hullabaloo around it. And you wonder, exactly where the team would have been had those two pitchers not been signed, because they've both had outstanding seasons.
Absolutely.
Well, the Rangers needed to address the back of the bullpen last offseason. And, all the things that went wrong, that one hit. They did address the back of the bullpen.
Yep.
So it can make you think last year, well, geez, if they'd had those two, would they have won 100 games? Probably.
Maybe.
Being realistic, yeah. But, Kirby Yates is making, $4.5 million this year? Robertson's deal was bigger, but they deferred a lot of it. I would bring those two guys back. I mean, I don't know what it would cost, but gosh, Matt, why not bring them back?
Well, I mean, it's certainly something that they have to consider despite their ages. Guys performing like this deep into their 30s is not something that you usually see. But then again, these guys are elite athletes. They take care of themselves. And they're, I thought when we signed Kirby Yates in the offseason, I don't know as though I've been more excited for an offseason signing because of what I saw from Kirby toward the end of the season last year with Atlanta and how he seemed to be progressing back to the Kirby Yates from a few years earlier that had, led the National League in saves when he was with the Padres. Just watching him and watching his splitter develop and get back to the really nasty splitter that he had before while he was pitching with Atlanta last year. I'm like, man, if he brings that to the table here in 2024, I know that he hasn't been signed and wasn't signed to be the closer, but I'm like, man, at some point he's going to find his way into that role, and it ended up being a lot earlier than some of us had expected. So,
yeah, but I mean, you look at their numbers are just it's just mind-boggling. They really are.
Yeah,
Yates, he's blown the one save. I mean, how about this? David Robertson is third on the team in strikeouts. He has 94 strikeouts in 67 innings. He has more strikeouts than John Gray, Dane Dunning, Jose Urena. I mean, guys that have more innings than him, a lot more innings than him, and he has more strikeouts than they do. It's just, and it's been fun to me. He just has like a joy about him when he plays too. The way he hops off the mound, shakes the catcher's hand, messes around with the umpires. It's kind of refreshing. It's fun to watch. And so at his age, 39, he lives in Rhode Island in the off season. I don't know if geography would dictate where he goes. It didn't this year. Yates probably has earned at least a 2-year deal, you would think. But if the Rangers are serious about winning next year, it's hard. It would be hard to say you're serious and not try to bring those two guys back.
Yeah, I think they both play with a great deal of passion, and I think that's something that you see in winning players and guys that want to be a part of a winning organization. You see that. The other number that's kind of crazy with Kirby Yates, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but the number of hits he's allowed this year versus the number of innings pitched, it's something like 22 hits and 58, 59. I mean, if you've got a good closer, maybe by the end of the year, he's at around 60 or 65 innings, and maybe he's given up 45 hits. I mean, Kirby's given up half of that.
Yeah, I've got it right here. It's 58 and 2/3 innings and 23 hits.
That's nuts.
That's amazing.
Insane.
And he's not throwing. He's not a guy up there throwing 99, 101. Some of these guys that are just overpowering people. And for you guys especially, and me with what I do after the game, both those guys too never back away from talking. They're there, whether they had a good game or not, which there was very rarely they had a bad one. But I mean, Robertson especially, he was there waiting for you when you got into that clubhouse to talk about anything you needed to talk about. Yates was the same way, always cordial and ready to talk if you needed it.
Yeah, and that's the mark of veterans who realize everything surrounding the job, and they're there and they're accountable, and they set an example for everybody else.
Yeah. No, Friday night in Seattle, Robertson gave up the 3-run homer to Julio Rodriguez, and his locker was right there when he walked in the clubhouse, and he was there, and he was waiting. It's professionalism. It's being accountable and being a good teammate, and pitchers have to do it more than anybody else.
Yep.
But personally, I want him back just because I like him.
Well, and the other thing too, I mean, not only are they good guys, but when you know that you've got that at the back end of the bullpen, from a team perspective, that's one less thing that you have to worry about. You know that element of the club is taken care of. So now let's address some other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is there anything offensively that can be done with external help, or is it a matter of these guys that are on the roster just figuring it out and getting better?
Well, after listening to Chris Young talk about his extension and what needs to be done immediately here for 2025, I get the sense that they feel like a big step forward for the offense will be A, having Evan Carter healthy, B, having Josh Young healthy and available for the full season, and having a guy like Adolis Garcia get back to what he was the last couple of years. But there's absolutely no way that I would be surprised by the Rangers going out and acquiring another player or two to help the offense, because one of the things that's apparent in the game today, and certainly it played out this year from a pitching standpoint, when the Rangers had acquired all of these pitchers, and some of them we knew that they weren't going to be ready at the start of the season and weren't going to be available for a long time. You're like, man, we've got a lot of guys. You can never have enough pitching, and the same can be said for position players. So I think that you might see the Rangers go out and get a bat or two here in the off season and create some competition, which is obviously going to be a good thing. I don't think that they're just going to rest on their laurels and these are our guys and this is what we're going to go with. So don't be surprised to see them pick up some guys.
Yeah, I think you can look at center field, first base, really catcher this year. The deal with Evan Carter is he's still not going to be an everyday player against left-handers unless he magically figures that out in the offseason.
Sure.
And the problem with Leote is they don't form a platoon because they both can't hit left-handers. So you need a right-handed hitting outfielder at the least. I don't think they want to make Wyatt Langford a full-time center fielder.
No.
He hasn't been bad, but you can tell it's not. He's still a work in progress defensively, even in left field. So I think that they may just have to overhaul center. I mean, I don't know who's available or what have you, but I think that's a position where they can upgrade. But they love Leote's defense, and then first base is another spot where we all love Nate Lowe, but
he's got to have power.
13 homers isn't going to cut it at that position.
Nope.
So I don't know.
And that's true. And I think we all love Nate because of the kind of person that he is. But you're right. Those discussions have to be had. One other thing that I think maybe, and who knows if the Rangers are going to broach this topic with Corey Seager, but as Seager gets older, is it going to be beneficial for him and for the ball club for him to perhaps move over to first base? seeing as how, Josh Smith's development this year and what we saw from him on the left side of the infield. Certainly he's a guy that if he's the starting shortstop, you're good defensively. He took, strides this year offensively. Now he's not going to be the power hitting guy that Corey Seager is, but maybe that's a discussion that needs to be had in terms of, how do we fill this out? How do we best use, the players that we have right now before we go out and get guys? But with Evan swinging from the left side against left-handed pitching, I think the hope was that this year that he was going to be an everyday guy who had the opportunity to figure that out. So now you're going to have him see a lot of left-handed pitching, I think, in spring training, so that the Rangers can decide whether or not he is an everyday guy or whether he is the strong side of a platoon guy. I would think, given his age, that the Rangers want him to be an everyday player.
Sure.
But he's got to be healthy, and he's got to get as many swings as he can against lefties to find out.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I know we talked about Yates and Robertson, but on the pitching side, I think Evaldi's got to be the number one offseason target. You can look at Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter and say, hey, great future, but they're going to have some speed bumps. You need a veteran guy, and I think Evaldi's just a natural fit.
And I would agree with that. And it's not just Nathan Evaldi and what he does every 5 days, but it's what he means to the ball club on a daily basis.
Yeah,
how much of an impact that he's had on not just the younger pitchers, but basically everybody else on the ball club. You talk about great teammates, and he's right at the top of the list. And he's a guy that you definitely want in the clubhouse for that clubhouse chemistry.
Yeah, no question. And I know like DeGrom, hopefully can make 25 starts. Let's be realistic here. He's coming off of Tommy John and hasn't thrown anywhere close to a normal load of innings since 2019. And
Kamara's never pitched a full pro season.
Yeah, even if Rocker's in the rotation, he's not going to throw 150 innings. So, it goes back to you can't have enough pitching. So,
never
get Evaldi, get a guy who is going to make 25 starts for you.
You may need more than Evaldi. Maybe you need to hit on a couple of these Urinas and stuff like that you sign on a minor league deal that can be long guys. And I mean, look, you need 8 or 9 starting pitching between AAA and the major leagues, because throughout the season, even if everyone's 100% healthy coming in, there's going to be times that they're just going to look at Jacob deGrom and go, you're not starting the next game. We just need to set you down, and we've got to manage you. Same with Kumar. They're going to have to do that with him. Leiter, if he makes the rotation, at least he's thrown some innings. He's been playing pro ball and throwing the innings, but you've got those two guys coming back from Tommy John are just not going to be available to go 150 to 200 innings. They're just not.
Right, and it's not just the Rangers. When you take a look at every ball club, it's very rare to have a team like Seattle. They've only had 7 starters. That happens. That happens once every 5 or 10 years throughout the big leagues, that a team only has 7 guys that have started for them all season long. And when you think about what the Rangers did this year, how many guys were there for every turn of the rotation? One guy, Andrew Heaney.
Right.
So when you're planning for the next season, okay, you might have one guy, you might have 2 guys if you're fortunate that are there for 30 starts. The rest, you're going to have 5, 6, 7 other guys that you feel are dependable and guys that are going to be at some point in the season standouts to be able to fill out that 162. You can't just go, okay, well, these are our 5 guys, because how many starters have the Rangers used this year? And that's typical of most ball clubs.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Now, the 2011 Rangers were like the season's Mariners, except I think it was even more or fewer starts. They had the 5 guys that went through the season without going on the injured list, which is unheard of, like you said.
That's unheard of.
But look what it did for him. So, but I can't. I just, and then you forget about Tyler Malley, right? I mean,
yep. Bradford,
he's 17 million next year. John Gray is 14 million. That's too much to be a reliever, probably. So I just don't see how they. I think there'll be some trades made this offseason on the pitching front. I don't know if with John going on the injured list every other week, it seems like. I just think it's going to be a wild offseason, honestly, when it comes to the pitching.
Yeah, and it could be, and that's one of the things you never know. What the offseason holds, but clearly the ball club has some assets. But you bring up another point, Jeff. I don't think the Rangers want to exceed the tax threshold in 2025. So how that money gets allocated is going to be important, because I think that they're probably going to want to stay under the threshold. Given the new rules in terms of, I think a lot of people are still learning about how the draft works now. It's not just, okay, you finish with the worst record in baseball, you get the first pick in the draft. It's not that way anymore. It's weighted, and this year, despite the fact that I think it's the A's and the White Sox, and how bad their record is, they're not going to be a part of that lottery deal. They're not going to have an opportunity to get the number one pick in the draft. And so how much money you spend on a yearly basis has an impact on all of that stuff. And so there's so much more now that goes into making these decisions. But I think the Rangers are probably going to want to stay under that threshold for 25.
Well, man, they still have to figure out their TV deal. It's just,
yeah.
MLB could do the games, though I don't think MLB is going to pay very well. So then, do the Rangers do it themselves? Can they do over-the-air games for part of their schedule? Definitely can't do the whole schedule. That's just too much inventory. It's just, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I don't know. This may be a situation where Ray Davis has to dig into his own pocket, and I don't know that that's his nature.
And a question that's way above my pay grade, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably one you don't want to answer as a club employee. So, yeah. So what are you going to do after the season ends? What does Matt Hicks do in the offseason?
Well, number one, you rest a little bit. My wife and I are planning on staying in LA a few days after the season ends, since our son is living out there now. So we're going to spend a little time out there. The only thing that we have planned beyond that is a trip to Vegas with some neighbors, which we're going to do at the end of October. So a little rest and relaxation before you start, cramming information for 2025.
What do you like to play in Vegas, man?
Well, you know what? We actually don't go very often. We have neighbors, our next door neighbors. They don't go all that often either, but they go with more regularity than we do, certainly. And this past spring training, when I had a couple of days off in the middle of spring training, we went out to LA to see our son, but we also took some time to go to Vegas, and we just had a good time for like 2 days. And so we were like, well, we get the opportunity again, we're going to go out there. And it's not like we're big gamblers, because goodness knows we're not very good at it. I've actually had a little luck just playing a couple of slots on a few occasions. I tell the story about once a few years ago when we were in Cleveland, having a day game, flying into Cleveland. And at night, I just wanted to go over and eat a little at the casino. And then I'll stop by the slots and see what happens. And I ended up walking away with like $800. And so, yeah. So occasionally I get lucky in that regard. But we just want to spend some time with our neighbors, have a good time. We're going to see a couple of shows and just rest and relax out there.
And it's somebody that's like that. Vegas is fun. You can go do that. But guys, there's a reason those casinos have all those lights and are really pretty. It's because if you go in with a mindset, I'm just going to take this much money and have a little fun, it's a lot of fun because that's just a great town and a lot of fun stuff. But I always say that there's a reason those casinos are so pretty and lit up so well. It's because they win a lot.
Yeah, they don't lose.
they don't lose.
They don't have a losing day ever.
Yeah.
I love going to Vegas for a football weekend. Yeah. On Saturday you have college football, and then on Sunday, of course, you have the NFL. It's just a good. I mean, if you want to watch games, throw some money out on the games. It's just a great way to spend.
You can bet $5 on a football game. It's awesome, and then they might give you a free malted beverage for that. And a lot of casinos.
Yeah, I don't know. Last I heard is they've really cut back on the free drinks, which is ridiculous.
I can tell you this. Back when I worked in El Paso, and this is a long time ago, one of the things that Jim Paul and Karen Paul and their staff did was they treated their employees to a trip to Vegas at the end of the season. So when the minor league season ended, there was still some work to do. They hosted something called the minor league baseball workshop, whatever it was. It was something that we would work for 3 or 4 days, and then shortly after that, usually in early October, we would take a staff trip to Las Vegas, and we had to pay for the trip in advance. But then, like the first time I went on the trip, the Monday before we took the trip on Tuesday, there'd be an envelope sitting on my desk, and I'd open up the envelope, and it had $300 cash in it. And so while you had to commit like $200 to the trip in the middle of the summer, they ended up basically paying for the trip. And we would go out there, and we'd be there on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, could do whatever you wanted to do. It was a good time. And one of the things that I would do is I'd go by one of the sports books, and I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to put down a parlay here on college football and spend $10, because that's basically, all I had working in the minor leagues. And I can remember one time putting down $10 on a 4-game parlay against the spread. And I wasn't going to find out until after we left Vegas, right? We were there Tuesday through Thursday. So we get back to El Paso. I'm watching as much college football as I can to see if I'm getting my games right. And my first 3 games were correct. So I only had 1 game left to hit the parlay. And the $10 bet was going to pay off like $240, $250, which was big for me back then.
Sure.
The final game was USC against Cal. And I bet USC to cover 14 points. And I couldn't find, and this is a long time ago. This is back in the 90s. It's not like you could just pick up your phone and follow the game. I didn't know what the score was. And finally, I came across one of the networks that had some highlights. And they're like, you're not going to believe the ending to the USC Cal game. And I'm like, oh, good. This is great. And they showed the score, and USC was up 26-10. And I'm like, yes. And there was less than a minute to go, and USC was punting, and this Cal guy received the punt at the 10-yard line. And 50 seconds later, after one of the most incredible punt returns of all time, where everybody from USC had 2 chances to tackle this guy, they didn't. And this guy scores a touchdown with like 10 seconds to go, and the final score was 26-16. I almost destroyed my television set.
And that was the old one with the big tube in it too. There wasn't the flat screens like today.
It was not a flat screen.
The best stories about Vegas are the losing stories, because I think it was 2000 or 2001. I had bet some money on the Masters, futures bet on the Masters. Chris DeMarco was 40-1. All right, and he was a pretty good little golfer at the time from Florida. And so he's winning the Masters deep into the last round, and he's winning until Tiger has that remarkable chip in on 16, where Tiger flew the green and then chipped it up, and it just rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled and stopped, and then went in, and he went crazy. Yeah. So that one shot cost me like $500. Yeah, because I was like, man, Chris DeMarco, and there's no second place. It's not like, oh, you finished second, you get half your money. It's win or nothing.
That's it.
Yeah. So I'm not a Tiger Woods fan because of that.
So then, Jeff, every time you see that replay, you get a little sick feeling in the pit.
I do. I'm like, son of a bitch.
He doesn't wear Nike products anymore. I mean, he's completely
my
done with
pocket
it.
starts to burn a little bit, and dang it. And you see
Well,
in the
Matt-
highlight every year.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, listen, Matt, we've taken up a lot of your time here, and I mean, it's great for you to pop on. It's fun every time I see Matt. We get down and start talking about our kids, and they're both in the same studying the same thing. Of course, your son's out now, and so he's out there trying to make it as an actor, and then my son's in his sophomore year now, so we're about to make our trips to Missouri to see some shows he's in and doing all of that. But I mean, it's just our friendship's come a long way since since I first started covering it. I appreciate you so much. We really appreciate you stopping down and taking time with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Always enjoy talking to you guys. What show is your son in? First show here this fall? Do you know?
Yeah, my wife has it all written out, and he tells me about the different parts. He's actually going to audition for a musical, even though he's not doing the music part of it. He's just studying acting, but he said he's going to audition for everything, even if he's chorus or whatever, just to do it all. And so I forget what it is. It's he has 8 things going at the same time too. He does a lot of that. Where in college, Jeff, you'll have a lot of the actors will write their own plays and they'll get other actors to do them, and so he's doing a lot of that too. So,
I get it.
Yep, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And it's fun to watch. I mean, if your kids are ever into any sort of theater, it is a lot of fun to watch, and you just appreciate so much what these actors do and how they can do that. So it's pretty impressive.
No question. They're always busy, and so it's good to hear that he's going to be busy this fall.
Well, guys, that's Matt Hicks. Matt, we thank you for stopping down. We're going to go down in the bus leagues right after this. Matt, thanks again, and we'll see you at the ball yard.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.